Tony D and Little Joan, and this is your, I guess you could call it a Piney podcast, but it's really about book 17 of the Pineys, 76 Piney. It is out. Both the Kindle and the print versions are available at Amazon.com, and I'm going to talk about it here. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out the Pineys. Books 1 through 17, available at Amazon.com. Some of you checked out the Pineys today at Wren's Coffee House and Books. That was in Blackwood. Check me out at Cape May Library, County Library, on the 5th at 6 p.m. I'll be doing a talk on how to get published in South Jersey. All right, so what's going on with book 17? Well, I can tell you a little bit about it. I don't want to give the whole store away. Come here, Joe. Yeah, come over here. This, of course, involves some of the founding fathers. Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, and Betsy Ross are all characters in the book. And the Pineys are involved, and they do interact with them, I will say. Let's see. Let me read you the write-up. Trapped in the past by a powerful hellspawn, the cousins will have to use everything they have to keep history from being destroyed. With the help of Ben, Betsy, George, and Thomas, the Pineys will have to stop a loyalist uprising fueled by demonic forces led by America's greatest traitor. And if they don't, it's the end of the 13 colonies and their ancestors. So grab your musket, join the revolution, and watch out for zombies, because this time America's enemies are coming back from the dead, and the Pineys are sending them back with a vengeance. So that's the synopsis. It does take place in Philadelphia and in South Jersey. So there's some big scenes in Philly, but there's also some big scenes in South Jersey. Did some very interesting research into the founding fathers. Got to learn that a little more about them. I already knew some things. I, of course, know quite a bit about Ben Franklin, being that he was instrumental in spreading the Jersey Devil legend back in the 1730s. And if you've ever seen my talks or a version of my talk online, you already know that story. He appears in book 9 of the Pineys during that era. It's 1730 actually when he appears, and he attended the Mount Holly witch trials, which happened in 1730. So he makes reference in the book to that time period, and you could see him in the cover there, and he's holding the book, and his eyes are glowing. All right, so a little hint there, what's going on. Betsy, as I said in a shorter video, is a Jersey girl. She was originally from Gloucester, and she married George Ross. She actually sort of ran away and eloped with her first husband. So her family wasn't too happy about that, from what I could glean in the history. Her family was a little more subdued, and her husband died early in the war. He was in the Revolutionary War. There's some contention of how exactly he died. There may have been some, later elaboration making him out to be a little more heroic than he was. He may have just been killed in a battle. But apparently some people tried to make it sound like he had some selfish act at the end where he blew up like some kind of depot or something. But so that's how she got the last name Ross, because her maiden name was Griscom. And her second husband was Richard Ashburn, and she married him during the war, and he was in the Navy during the war. He got caught by the British and put in a prison camp, and During that time in the prison camp, he got sick, and his friend at the prison camp was a guy by the name. His last name was Claypool, and he made Claypool promise that he would take care of Betsy if he died, and he did die in prison. And then Claypool, I think he was let out in a prisoner exchange, and came back to America towards the end of the war. And then I think right after the war they got married. So her third husband was Claypool, and she stayed married to him for the rest of her life, and they had some more kids. And this was a time period where they had a lot of kids. Betsy herself, I think, was one of a high number, like 18, 16 or 18, I forget. So her and Claypool had a lot of kids. A lot of the kids would die early on from various things. So she was a very interesting character, so I was glad to have her on board. It was interesting to read about her, too, because I guess it was in the 1950s, the U.S. government wanted to promote more patriotism, and so they wanted a female figure in the revolution to promote. So they picked Betsy, and she was a pretty good choice. I mean, she definitely was in the mix. But it was interesting that they picked her as Betsy Ross, right? Because really, her last name really, for most of her life, her last name became Claypool. But they called her, I think, Betsy Ross because that was like a quick sounding name. That sounded the best out of all of them. Like it could have been Betsy Ross, Betsy Ashburn, or Betsy Claypool. Betsy Ross was like, has the zing, right? So I think that's why they picked that and why we know her more as Betsy Ross. She did do the whole flag thing. That is true. There's some details of the flag, discussion that gets lost and we're not totally sure of. But she was friends with George Washington. They went to the same church. And she knew him when he was Colonel Washington. And Ross, her first husband, was pretty piped into the Washington and the Founding Fathers because his father was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So Betsy was right in the middle, and she was a fierce patriot. Her nickname was Little Rebel, given to her by a British soldier who listened to her rant on and on about freedom one night during like some sort of fancy party, and he sort of derisively referred to her as Little Rebel. So that was kind of interesting. Jefferson, of course, I brought him in. Now, history doesn't quite align with what I wanted to happen in the book. Franklin, during the time of the book, was actually in France negotiating the peace deal. And Jefferson, he may have also been in Europe too. He was in a lot of different places, but they both weren't in Philadelphia. And really, Washington wasn't in Philadelphia either during this time. Late in the war, he was, I think he was in Jersey somewhere, in the middle of the state. Betsy was in Philadelphia, though. And so I have done things in the book that account for stuff like that. So, when you read it and you go, oh my God, like how would this, jibe with real history? You'll find out at the end how it all sort of works out. Of course, all the Pineys are in it. The four main cousins, Lewis, Hemingway, Shelley, and Milton. They all have their various scenes. Shelley has a really big payoff, I think, as does Hemingway, of course, and Lewis to some extent, and Milton to some extent. Milton gets a little bit shafted sometimes because he's the quiet one, I think, but they all get sort of big scenes and get to interact with the Founding Fathers. So I don't want to say too much more than that. I don't want to give away some of the surprises. But I will say that the following Pineys books sort of tie into this book. So, book 6, book 7, definitely book 7, um, book 14, book 13, and I believe, was it 15? I think, and 16. So, a lot of good South Jersey historical appearances in this one. More history than folk tales in this one as well. Some folk tales. I got to do a cool opening with a place I did a signing at, which I like a lot, and I mentioned before in my videos. Again, I won't give it away. You can read the book. But I was happy to put them in because I really like that place. It's a really cool museum in South Jersey. It was one of my favorite museums, quite frankly. And I have been planning this book, just so you know, since probably the beginning of the series. I came up with the idea. Initially I wrote a list of book ideas for the Pineys, and this was on the first list. But I didn't get around it until now because I wanted to establish certain things leading into it. And once I did that, I eventually wanted to do this. And it occurred to me that this was book 17. And if I did it now, it would say, as you can see on the cover, book 17, 76 Piney. Get it? So that worked out great in terms of the numbering. And so I was very excited to put it. I was actually thinking about saving it until the summer because I wanted to come out, 4th of July kind of thing. But then I thought it might be better to have it out now. So by the time summer rolls around, I definitely have copies, and it's definitely something that'll, I think, sell during the 4th of July. Along with, of course, book 16, which covers all the holidays. I covered all the holidays in the previous book. The story is a lot of fun. It's pretty epic, and I, as always, I actually love time travel, although Hemingway hates it, and so I got to do a lot of time travel-y type things because, again, I think time travel, in my case, works best when it's supernatural in origin because you don't have to worry about the physics involved. There's a little bit of alternate history stuff going on, sort of in the background of everything. But for the most part, it's the way things should be. And you'll find out why if you read the book. I'm sorry to be so coy, but I don't want to give away too many of the story elements. It kind of ruins the surprise. But had a lot of fun. A lot of fun writing this one. Especially changing the dynamic up a little bit. Because, Hemingway is often the biggest badass in the series. But in this one, he has to take a backseat to Washington. So I enjoyed writing his reaction to Washington a lot. And that was fun. Also, Betsy has an additional tie-in with the cousins, which, again, I won't give away. But that was fun to write, too. And also, there is a return of someone. You can if you read the books, you can probably guess who it is. A return of one of the villains. And he, of course, we get to see him in action, and the dynamic there is pretty cool, I would say. Oh, let's see. Did I mention book 14? Yeah, book 13, 14, 6, and 7. I think there was one other. 9. That's the one. Yeah, so 5 of the books. You should read all 5 of those books before you read this one. Ideally, if you want to get the extra jokes in it. Because to me, it's the details. The devil's in the details, as they say. And yeah, the callbacks are huge payoffs for me. huge payoffs. Oh, wait, and I almost forgot. There's a 16. Book 16 has a reference, too. Big reference in 16. God, yeah, forgot about that one. Yeah, 16. Yeah, just read the whole series, is my advice. Um, so, yeah, I've got some new fans. New fans today at the Wren's Coffee House, so hopefully some people will buy the later issues. I'm seeing a lot of people who now I see them at shows and they go, "Oh yeah, I bought one of your books," and I immediately ask, "Well, did you read it?" And they go, "Oh, not yet." And I go, "What are you waiting for? Read the book. It's short." I think a lot of people they get excited about reading the book and then they're afraid they're going to get caught up in reading it and like it'll take too long or something. My books read super fast, super fast. They're dialogue driven, so there's a lot of like back and forth, between Lewis and Hemingway and the other characters. So yeah, don't worry about the speed. You can knock out one of my books in an afternoon, especially if you're a reader. If you're a regular reader, it'll be no problem. Even if you're not a reader, I think you can knock it out in the afternoon. So, in this case, get yourself a nice comfy chair, relax, listen to some music, maybe put on some patriotic music for this one, and read the Pineys. It's the most patriotic Pineys ever. Yeah, I almost called it the Patriot Piney. Almost. I think if I hadn't hit book 17, that's probably what I would have called it, the Patriot Piney. I still might use that title for another story. I don't know. It's got a good cadence to it, the Patriot Piney. Book 18, I've already started. And book 19, I have an idea for. So, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with the idea I have for book 19. I think I can make it work. And that one's going to have another number thing if that's the story I go with. So, that'll be cool. And yeah, so those are going to be the 3 books this year. This is the March book. 18, I can't really tell you about that one yet. And 19 for Halloween. Yeah. So it's going to be another fun year. Next up for me is as I said, the Cape May County Library on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Next week. And that's going to be how to get published in South Jersey. And then Thursday, 8 p.m., I'll be at the American Werewolf podcast, the podcast I was on before. We're going to be talking about Gene Hackman in various movies. Friday and Saturday, 7th and 8th, I will be at Gator Weekend at One More Bar and Grill, unless I get rained out. That's the only downside. Is it going to rain? We should check to see the rain situation, doggy, because that would be a disaster. One More Bar and Grill, I do so well there. I don't think it's supposed to rain this week. It looks clear Friday. Saturdays might hit some rain on Saturday. What's that look like? No, it's looking pretty low, actually. It's looking like it's late in the day. So that might not be an issue at all. And then Sunday, the 9th, is my birthday, and I will be doing Lines in the Pines at Stockton State College. They do that every year. This is PineyCon. If you're not coming to Lines in the Pine, are you really a Piney? Are you really? And then I'm going to be having delicious sushi. So that's my week, and this is my summary of the Pineys. I can't tell you more than that. I don't want to give it away. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. And we'll see you in the next one. Say bye, doggy. Bye, everybody.